welcome back to BNG Hockey, where it's always black and gold. We're one step closer to watching the Bruins drop the puck this season, as today was the official start of training camp. We're going to take a look at both groups and the line pairings, and then I'll give you my 5 biggest takeaways from day 1 of training camp. Let's talk about it. Let's start off by taking a quick look at both groups and all line pairings from day 1 of training camp. Now, I should start off by saying if you don't like some of these lines, don't freak out. They are likely to change. Bruce Cassidy is going to try plenty of things before training camp is over, but some of them will definitely stick, and he's putting them together now so they develop that chemistry before the season. Marchand, Bergeron, and Studnicka, I definitely hope that line sticks. This is going to be really interesting to see what the Bruins do without David Pastrnak, and Studnicka is likely going to have to play wing if he makes the team this year. It's highly unlikely he plays his natural center position when they have Bergeron, Krejci, and Coyle. So if you need him to play wing and you have a hole there, why not give the kid a shot? I could see Bjork potentially playing with Bergeron and Marchand, and I think that's why they put him in this group. I don't think he's going to be playing on the 4th line this year. He's just not a 4th liner, and I know you see him listed there, but one of the guys beneath him is far more likely to play on the 4th line. You got a guy like Par Lindholm. Senyshyn's an interesting option, and I could definitely see Trent Frederic being our 4th line center at some point this year. I know that's not what we drafted him for, but hey, if he makes the NHL, that's something. He's a big kid who could be a really nice fit. If you move Corrali to left wing and you have Wagner on his right, that's a pretty solid 4th line, especially if that kid pans out. And Paul Carey, NHL veteran, maybe makes the taxi squad. Taking a look at the defensive pairs in this group, it was interesting to see Charlie McAvoy playing alongside Lauzon and Zaboral. Lauzon was mostly a third-pairing defenseman last season, but he didn't look out of place in the NHL, and if you're going to give that spot to a young defenseman, why not give it to a young defenseman who has a little bit of NHL experience? Zaboral, on the other hand, has no experience, but he was arguably the Providence Bruins' best defenseman last year, and he was drafted to be a top 4 defenseman. It would be huge if he could finally make the jump and play alongside Charlie McAvoy. So I like that the Bruins got to look at those two playing together right off the bat to see if it could potentially work this year. You see Miller playing on the left side. That's pretty interesting. I think the Bruins potentially see their right side being McAvoy, Carlo, and Clifton. So if they want Miller in the lineup, he's going to have to play on the left side. Maybe he can help fill a hole there. You see Ashawn, I did a video on him a while back when they signed him. Haven't heard too much since, but he's still a pretty promising prospect, and he could be the next Torrey Krug or the next Matt Grzelcyk, depending on how high you are on this kid. And it's nice to see Kampfer back. He had to opt out for the NHL return to play in the bubble, but he's likely going to be on the taxi squad for the Bruins this season. And as far as the goaltenders go, no surprise, it's the usual suspects: Tuukka Rask, Dan Vladar, who is the 3rd goalie for the Bruins in the bubble, and they do have to carry 3 goalies once again, and it will likely be Vladar being the 3rd goalie. This 3rd guy here, Callum Booth, I'm going to be honest here, guys, I have never heard of and didn't even know he was a Bruin, but welcome to the team, and yeah, he's not going to make the team. Now let's take a look at Group B. You see David Krejci centering DeBrusk and Kasha. This line needs to work this year, so it's no surprise seeing them together right from the start of training camp, and I don't think we'll ever see them separated. I think Cassidy really wants them to get that chemistry going so they're ready for the start of the season. It was really hard for Kasha to become a Bruin in such little time, and then he was running around getting into trouble with Pastrnak before the return to play, so it's really nice to have a clean slate here and a fresh look at Kasha, and I think he's going to be excited for that as well. He has a great amount of speed, he's still young, so he's developing as a player overall, and he has a pretty good shot, so I think he could still be a promising top 6 option for the Bruins. DeBrusk needs to get better too. He needs to prove that he can be consistent in the top 6. And if he doesn't, he's going to get traded out of here eventually. And David Krejci, there are some people out there who really think this guy is going to get an extension from the Bruins. And it's no surprise to fans. If you have been with the channel for a long time, I am dreading that. And I was very much looking forward to this being his last year and getting that $7.5 million in cap space at the end of the season. So let's see. Krejci looked good in the playoffs, but he needs to prove that he can still be a second-line center at the NHL level, and if he is going to come back, he needs to get a significant pay cut. Maybe he can prove me wrong here and have a great season, though. 3rd line here is very interesting. Coyle and Smith, that's going to be a dynamite duo. I don't think Ritchie can play on the 3rd line. He is still on the younger side, and he was a top 10 pick, but I don't think he's panned out that way. I would like to see him on the 4th line, maybe playing alongside a Corrali and a Wagner, or a Frederic and a Wagner. Whatever you want to do with Nick Ritchie, you have him for one more year. It doesn't look like he's going to be the best fit on the Bruins, but he can play physical. Maybe he stands in front of the net and is a net front presence and can help screen the goalie for a guy who's a sniper like Craig Smith. These other guys here likely won't make the team, and the Bruins just wanted another look at them. They're probably all going to Providence. Potentially Greg McKegg could make the team, or the taxi squad. Taking a look at the D pairs, you see Grzelcyk and Moore alongside Carlo. I think Grzelcyk is going to have a much bigger role this season, and I see him replacing Krug on the power play, so why not replace Krug alongside Brandon Carlo as his D partner? Those two could work really well together. And John Moore, I want to see him play more this season. It's really tough for him to be scratched all the time and then be expected to come back into the lineup and pick up right where he left off. He does have quite a bit of NHL experience, and if we're going with a younger blue line, it might not be a bad idea to play John Moore, even if it's just every other game on back-to-back situations. Vakanainen could be a gem for the Bruins this season, and I really hope he makes the team. I have some high hopes for this kid. Wolf, I feel like he's another year away, but if they are looking to add size and replace Chara a little bit, you could certainly do that because Wolf is 6'5", and he's still on the younger side, so he's developing, which is a good thing. Another guy who's developing, Connor Clifton. He's been a nice surprise, and I expect him to take another step forward, even if it's just as a third-pairing defenseman. For the goaltenders, I'm really glad Halak is back for another year. I expect him to play in quite a few games, especially with so many back-to-back situations, so I'm happy the Bruins can rely on him. Even though he wasn't so great in the playoffs, that was a really weird situation for him to be in, and he's not a starting goaltender, but he can be a nice tandem goaltender, and him and Rask have really worked well since he's joined the team. Swayman is the goaltender of the future for the Bruins. There's no doubt about that. I don't think it's smart for the Bruins to keep him around as the third goaltender. I'd rather he be the starter in Providence and get a lot more playing time and continue to develop and maybe make the team right off the jump next season, which is not that far away. And now let's move on to my top 5 takeaways from today's training camp. The biggest takeaway by far is seeing Studnicka play with Bergeron and Marchand on the wing. I have been saying this for a long time on the channel, so clearly Bruce Cassidy is now a subscriber at B&G Hockey, so thanks for subscribing, Bruce, and you're welcome for the idea. This is going to work perfectly. David Pastrnak is going to miss some time. They need somebody up there who has offensive talent, and Studnicka is just that. And this is really going to help jumpstart Studnicka's NHL career. Bergeron and Marchand have done this plenty of times, whether it was with Tyler Seguin playing wing, even though he's a natural center, whether you look at a guy like Riley Smith, who has now become a consistent top 6 forward, but really kind of broke out when he played alongside Bergeron and Marchand. These are two legit NHLers, and if you're going to learn from anybody, it might as well be these guys. And even though Studnicka is a natural center, this is still really going to help him. He's going to get some points, and hopefully he feels a little more confident after playing with these guys when he's eventually moved down in the lineup. The next biggest takeaway was seeing Matt Grzelcyk play alongside Brandon Carlo. For a long time, I've wanted to see Matt Grzelcyk and McAvoy together a lot more, and they definitely could still be a good D pair and still end up together this season. This is just day one, and they are trying a lot of different things. Not everything is going to stick from the line pairs of day one, but I never really thought about Grzelcyk and Carlo being a D pair. Krug and Carlo were a fantastic D pair for a long time. They complement each other really well. Krug being an offensive defenseman and Carlo being a defensive shutdown defenseman. I see no reason why Grzelcyk can't just sub in that role. They're very similar players. I've said that for a long time. I think that Grzelcyk could become a Krug. Maybe not the same superstar level of talent and maybe not as many points, but we never really have seen Grzelcyk get that opportunity. So why not give him that shot on the top power play and give him the D partner that Krug once had? I do think McAvoy and Grzelcyk would be a great D pair. They've played a lot together in the past. They both have a good amount of speed and are pretty responsible two ways. But it is interesting to think about. That maybe opens up a spot next to McAvoy, and if you can find somebody who can play well with him, suddenly your top 4 looks a lot better and you kind of spread the wealth a little bit. So just something to think about, and it was interesting to see Bruce Cassidy try that right off the bat. The third takeaway is something that I've known since the day we signed him, but something that's taking some Bruins fans and media a little bit of extra time to figure out, and that's how good Craig Smith is and how perfect he will be playing alongside Charlie Coyle on the third line. Now, I know there are some fans out there who are hoping that he'd be the solution at top 6 right wing. He still very well could be. If Studnicka doesn't work out while Pastrnak is out, I could see Smith moving up and playing with Bergeron and Marchand. Potentially, he could be Krejci's right wing. But as I mentioned before when we were looking at the lines, lines. I think that's got to be Kasha's spot, at least to start. He's still developing, and it would be best for the team if Kasha can become a top 6 forward, and then Smith is playing in your bottom 6. If you have a legit third line, that means you're a Stanley Cup contending team, and that's what the Bruins want to be. He's going to be perfect alongside Coyle. I love that Bruce Cassidy is already putting them together, making sure they build that chemistry, because the season is coming up quick, and Smith won't have that much time to get adjusted to the team, so it's better off if he's going to play with Coyle that he gets as much time playing with Coyle as possible. I am really excited for Smith, and you guys should be too. The fourth takeaway is how good Kevin Miller looked at day 1 of training camp. He's missed almost a year and a half, so even the fact that he's out there at all is pretty impressive. But multiple Bruins media members and Bruins themselves were saying that he looked great out there. Marchand said he was an animal on the ice. That's pretty high praise, and I know those guys are friends, and you're not really going to bash your teammate, especially after he's missed all that time. But it's good to see that Miller is back to normal. This is a guy who I like quite a bit. I don't love that they paid him that much on a contract. Would I rather have Chara than Miller? I don't really want to get into that debate. I think they play a similar role at this point in their career, but you're going to need Miller, especially if you don't have Chara, for the penalty kill. He's not afraid to block shots. That's half the reason he gets injured in the first place, because he's not afraid to get in shot lanes, and he's not afraid to play a physical style of game. He's a tough guy, both physically and mentally. He can help the team in that aspect, and he's a solid option to have for a depth guy. If he's able to fight for a spot on that right side with a guy like Connor Clifton, who we all like, but let's be honest, might be a little bit overrated this early on in his career. That's only good for the Bruins. It does seem like they might have tried him a little bit at left D today. That's normally his offside, and I don't know how much he's played that in the past, but maybe they're looking at that hole on the left side and thinking that Miller can handle that. All in all, it seems like a good thing. If he's ready to go, I'm not getting my hopes up, and this guy is one more block shot away from being out for another year, but it would be a nice add if we have a healthy Miller who's motivated to come back and prove that he can still play, bring a little bit of toughness, bring a little bit of physicality and leadership. He did lead the group stretch at the end with Bergeron. Bruce Cassidy said that he's a veteran and a leader who could help this year's group. So all good things, and it's only a plus for the Bruins if Miller is back and healthy. The final takeaway from day 1 of training camp is the status of Brad Marchand. It was really interesting to see him out there in a red non-contact jersey, considering that we've heard from him, Bruce Cassidy, and the Bruins media that he's potentially going to be ready to go for night 1 with the Bruins. But why isn't he taking part in full practice if he's going to be ready to go in less than 10 days now? That was a little concerning for me, and I would hope that it's just to be safe and they don't want him to aggravate something right before the season if they are just getting him back. But he did say he's feeling a lot better after his surgery, that this was something that he's had for a couple of years now, which is concerning to me as well, because he said he was playing at 80% before because of the pain. So I don't love that, and I don't love the fact that maybe he wasn't playing to his full potential because of that injury. But now it's all figured out. He should be 100%, so we might see Marchand come back better than ever this season. And he's still a point-per-game player even with that injury. So I am excited. If Marchand is healthy and ready to go, he's going to have a big year, it sounds like, and he's confident that he can do that. But it was a little bit concerning to hear that he's ready to go, but he wasn't taking contact and he didn't take part in the full practice. So we'll see what happens with that, but it's something to keep an eye on, that's for sure. Let me know your thoughts. What were your takeaways from day 1? What would you like to see the Bruins try for the rest of training camp? Leave that down below in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a big like, and if you haven't already, subscribe.